Moscow. What comes to mind? Probably Red Square, right? The Kremlin, all that power and history. But there's so much more to it. We're going to look beyond those famous landmarks, because this is a city with an incredible story of resilience, of massive change, and just constant transformation.
Just look at the Bolshoi Theater here. I mean, it's stunning, right? For centuries, this has been the grand face that Moscow shows to the world. It's a symbol of incredible artistic talent and imperial might, a building that has seen it all and somehow weathered every storm imaginable. So, let's peel back the layers, shall we? What's really going on behind all that gold leaf in those massive columns? What's the real story of this city? What has it seen? Well, that's exactly what we're here to dig into.
Okay, so our journey's going to start way back in Imperial Russia. We're talking about a time of just almost unbelievable wealth for a select few, and a super rigid social structure that really shaped the city for hundreds of years.
Look, to get a handle on old Moscow, you have to understand serfdom. All that splendor we just talked about, well, it was basically built on a system where millions of people were literally tied to the land. Their labor paid for the lavish lifestyle of the aristocracy. So when the serfs were finally emancipated in 1861, it wasn't just some minor reform. No way. It was a total economic earthquake. It really set the stage for everything that came after.
And this right here, this shows you exactly what that elite world was like. This is a kosh, a ceremonial drinking cup. Now, you didn't just go out and buy one of these. If you were really in favor, you got one from the Tsar himself. It was this physical, tangible symbol of you've made it. It showed off your wealth, your status, basically your spot in the whole imperial pecking order. And this imperial power wasn't just about money, it was total. You can see this so clearly back in the 17th century, under Tsar Alexis. This is when the state really, decisively put its foot down and asserted its authority over the Orthodox Church. And this wasn't some small disagreement, It was a fundamental power shift that established the Tsar's dominance in a way that would define Russia for centuries to come.
Okay, so from imperial politics, we're going to jump way forward to what was, without a doubt, the city's darkest hour. Fast forward to the fall of 1941. Hitler's armies have pushed deep into the Soviet Union, and they are literally at the gates of Moscow.
The German assault, called Operation Typhoon, kicked off in October. And believe me, within a month, things were looking desperate. You could literally see Axis troops from the outskirts of the city. It really seemed like Moscow was about to fall. But then, something changed. The brutal Russian winter started to set in, and Marshal Zhukov launched this massive counteroffensive. It completely turned the tide, and by January, the capital was secure.
And just to give you an idea of how bad things were at the start, in the very first moves of the battle, at places called Vyazma and Bryansk, a mind-boggling 650,000 Soviet soldiers were captured. The road to Moscow looked terrifyingly wide open.
But this is where the city's spirit really shines. Moscow itself basically became a fortress. And you've got to picture this. 600,000 civilians, mostly women, out there in the freezing mud and snow, with just shovels and picks, digging these enormous anti-tank ditches all around their city. Can you imagine? It was just this colossal collective act of pure defiance.
And then came Russia's oldest and most reliable ally, General Winter, as they call it. The German army was just catastrophically unprepared for it. Their weapons froze up because they used the wrong kind of oil. They didn't have proper winter clothes. The Red Army, on the other hand, they were ready. Their weapons were designed for the cold, and their troops could move easily in the snow. It was a brutal, but absolutely decisive advantage.
The impact of this defeat was just seismic. Germany's own Chief of the Army General Staff, a guy named Franz Halder, called it the greatest crisis in 2 world wars. Think about that. The defense of Moscow wasn't just another battle. It was Hitler's first major land defeat of the entire war, and it completely shattered that myth of German invincibility.
And yet, through all of it, through tsars, wars, revolutions, Moscow's incredible cultural soul didn't just survive, it thrived. This is a city that's been defined just as much by its artists as by its generals. I mean, the city is an absolute treasure trove of art. You go to the Pushkin Museum, and your jaw will just drop at the collection of European masters. We're talking Monet, Renoir, Van Gogh, Gauguin, Cézanne. I mean, come on. It's an absolutely stunning lineup of Impressionist and Post-Impressionist genius.
But here's the cool part. Russia wasn't just buying art. It was a hotbed for new ideas. It's fascinating, really.
The artistic revolution here actually happened before the political one. Years before 1917, you had artists like Kandinsky and Malevich who were already just ripping up the rulebook, creating the world's very first abstract paintings. They were changing art forever.
And of course, in the world of music, you have Tchaikovsky. It was right here, in this city, while he was teaching at the Moscow Conservatory, that he composed some of his most famous pieces, including the ballet that everyone knows, Swan Lake.
And I love this little story. It's about another cultural giant, the opera star Fyodor Shalyapin. So after he'd finished singing for his guests, he loved to play a game of billiards. The only catch? He was a really sore loser. So his wife, being very clever, made sure she only invited friends who were good enough to, well, to lose to him gracefully. Isn't that great?
All right, let's jump to our final chapter, the crazy, chaotic, and completely transformative rebirth of Moscow right after the Soviet Union collapsed.
So the 1990s, they changed absolutely everything. Once communism fell, a ton of investment poured in, and this created a new wealthy class. They called them the New Russians, and their money fueled this boom that completely remade the city. It rapidly changed the drab, gray Moscow of the Soviet days into a place of glitz, nightclubs, and raw ambition.
So how fast was this change? Get this. Between 1991 and 1997, that's just 6 years, the number of cars in the city quadrupled. 4 times as many. The entire sound and rhythm of Moscow was being rewritten, almost overnight.
So this new Moscow really became a global city, drawing visitors from all over the world. And hey, if you ever find yourself there, it helps to know a few key phrases. A simple "Zdravstvuyte" for hello, "Pожалуйста" for please, and "Spasibo" for thank you. Trust me, it can go a long way in this totally transformed city. But maybe nothing shows this search for a new identity better than this right here. This is the Cathedral of Christ the Redeemer. It's this monumental building that Stalin himself had demolished back in 1931, and then in the 1990s, it was completely rebuilt. You can imagine what a powerful symbol that was. A city literally rebuilding a piece of its past that had been violently wiped off the map for 70 years.
So what you see when you look at Moscow is a city of these really deep layers. It was forged by the ambition of tsars, tested to its absolute breaking point by war, and then totally remade in the fires of capitalism. And all of that leaves us with one final, fascinating question. What on earth will be written in Moscow's next chapter?